You know, Ken Rogoff wrote a real good book on this. Ray Dalio's talked about it a lot. Can you get Ray called it a beautiful deleveraging. And we kind of had a shot, and I think we blew it. And so now if you look with 5%, 6%, 7% rates, as you start funding the deficit, originally it doesn't feel like it hurts so much because the way they account for it is what's your average coupon of government. And we went so many years issuing under 1% coupons. As those roll off and you replace them with 5 and 6% coupons, we're going to have $1 trillion in debt service. Again, $1 trillion is roughly 4% of GDP. That used to be the max deficit we were allowed to run. Right. It's just debt service. I think we as a country, both Dems and Republicans, made a tremendous error of declaring war on China. And we really have declared war on China. I spent 7 years of my life in Hong Kong. I have been to China an immense amount of times. I have tons of friends from the investing world and non-investing world. They were cheating, fair and square. They were cheating. I mean, clearly they were cheating. They were cheating on IP. They were cheating on a lot of things. We should have smacked them with a ruler across the fingers and said, stop goddamn cheating, but not declare them the enemy. I mean, now you've got this fanaticism. These guys, they're all spies. And so A, that's not good for the world. B, it's not good for peace. C, it leaves us more nervous than we need to be. I don't believe China has this diabolical plan to take over the U.S. I think they want to compete. I think they want to be as wealthy per capita as we are. Long way from it. But we're all going to be nervous about them for a while. And that politics plays right now. The only thing Democrats and Republicans can agree on is fuck China.
Right.
And that's not great. Sorry for cursing.
No, you're fine. So what do you think their aspirations, if any, are in terms of Taiwan? And when you have an unemployment rate, a youth unemployment rate is probably approaching 30%. I mean, again, history suggests the way you get yourselves out of these things is to start something.
Yeah, right. Used cars prices went. We went years without enough new cars, and people want cars. So autos aren't going to a recession. Housing, the biggest employer on the margin that creates recessions is housing, is construction. And you saw housing starts, I think it was today, booming. But post 08, we had a huge deficit of housing that we still have. We have a deficit of public housing, but an overall deficit of housing. And so the industries that might fire a lot of people aren't. And so it's hard to see a big recession without unemployment spiking. And unemployment will go up small. It has, and then bounces around. But we're still what used to be considered full employment or very tight employment. And so I don't see, also the demographics, people getting older, they stop working. It's hard to see a monster recession. And I think we were used to, this is a little bit back to, we all have these algorithms, right? People were younger. Our algorithms were the cycle, boom, we're going to have unemployment back to 8%. They're cutting rates. Like that's not happening. And so the surprise recently is the Fed said, right? Like central bankers broadly often do the government's bidding. And I remember during the Obama administration when the Tea Party showed up and said, no more spending, no more spending. We actually needed a fiscal impetus. And the economy couldn't get off its 2%. And so I remember talking to the Fed, talking to Dudley, they were like, we have to carry all the water right now because the government's not doing their side. Now it's the exact opposite. The government's spending like they're drunken sailors, and the central banks, if they were really tough, they said, we're not funding it.
Right.
But they're in this unholy alliance. And so I call it economic stewardship. I always say Bitcoin is a report card on good economic stewardship. If we took our deficit from our spending from 25% to 20% and our deficit from 6% to 0, Bitcoin would be lower, not higher.
Yeah, I agree with that.
And gold would be lower, not higher. And so I don't see our government, the European governments, almost any government getting away from what I call populism. And Satoshi saw that when he wrote the Bitcoin white paper. The white paper was literally like a cure to populism. And so people who want to buy it can buy it. It's easy to buy, but there's no one proselytizing. And so it's going to go up because central banks are buying it, and some professional investors are going to say, Why did it have that big reversal? It took out, the all-time high. It was a Sunday night. I was sitting in Jamaica, had the wrong phone with me, and I just saw the flash, and I was like, and I told my guys, I was like, guys, I have a podcast, and we always give the guest an ounce of gold for his best idea at the end. And he gets all excited because very few people own an ounce of gold. Right. And I was like, and my buddy bought like 30 of them for our first 30 podcasts. And I said, we better buy more because it's going to be $3,000, not $2,000. I think I jinxed every gold investor because by the time I got back to the US, it was 4% lower. I think that was just stops. CPA's got too long. It's going to consolidate. We're going to get above 2,000. We'll be 3,000 this time next year.
I agree with that. So you mentioned Larry Fink. The polar opposite is Jamie Dimon, and he's dug in his heels in terms of, you're on one side of the equation. I mean, he's clearly on the other. And I'm not looking at it's not an indictment. It's just an observation.
So what I would say to Jamie Dimon here in New York, there's someone in a village in Indonesia telling that story, and the viral nature of 8 billion people getting more converts every day is really hard to stop. The other piece of this is Bitcoin exists within a movement called, you can call it crypto or decentralization. And that movement touches people in a way because it feels like it's a revolution. It's a revolution of saying, I want to cut out the middleman. I want to trust in myself. I want to have peer-to-peer transaction. I want to have more efficiency, equal access. So there's this, I think, progressive, but it's like it's half progressive, half libertarian ethos that people buy into. And so you've seen it in the Ethereum community or in all these other communities that have showed up. What's been disappointing is outside of payments, not in the US, but out in Mideast, Africa, Latin America, crypto is used a lot for payments, stable coins mostly. The core next mission, the Web3 mission, the decentralized trading, the decentralized rideshare, the decentralized ticketing, hasn't really shown up yet. Some green shoots, it's taking longer than I thought.